President Bola Tinubu has extended his deepest sympathies to the victims of a gas explosion at Itaoshi, Abeokuta North local government area of Ogun State. The explosion from a solitary gas truck rippled through the community, resulting in the loss of life and property. In a statement by his special advisor on media and publicity, Ajurin Gelale, the president also sympathizes with the Ogun State government and residents of the state over the tragedy. President Tinubu commends Governor Dakpo Abiodun on his valiant efforts to arrest the situation and immediately restore calm to the community. The president assures the people of Ogun State, particularly the victims of this harrowing incident, of his fervent support in this moment of grief. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has congratulated Emeritus Professor Ayo Banjo at NIT. Ayo Banjo is an academic par excellence, and he has contributed to the development of English language curriculum in Nigeria and the promotion of Nigerian varieties of English, and he is the former chairman of the board of the National Universities Commission and was pro-chancellor of the universities of Port Harcourt, Ilori, and Ajayi Crowther. His scholarly output includes over 50 publications as well as widely used textbooks in primary and secondary education. The president celebrates the former vice-chancellor of the University of Ibadan for his remarkable contributions to the development of education in Nigeria, while wishing him good health and many more years filled with joy. Moving on now, Nigeria is set to harness the potential of its youthful population to transform into a global digital economy powerhouse, with plans to become a global hub for outsourcing talents. Vice President Kashim Shettima expressed the federal government's confidence at the meeting of African heads of state and government on the 21st replenishment of the International Development Association in Nairobi, Kenya. Vice President Shettima informed other African leaders of the reforms implemented by the Tinubu administration to curb illicit activities and currency manipulation that had long hindered the nation's progress. Alongside the digital transformation agenda, the Vice President said Nigeria is committed to prioritizing climate resilience and becoming an attractive destination for carbon market investment. President of Kenya, William Ruto, said the summit was urgent because it was convened at a critical juncture facing a convergence of global crises, which including escalating geopolitical tensions that challenge international unity, deepening development and debt crisis that threatens economic stability, and urgent climate emergency that demands immediate and collective action. At the end of the summit, African heads of state and government adopted a joint communique committing countries on the continent to accelerate the continent's economic transformation by strengthening implementation capacities, mobilizing domestic resources, and partnering effectively with AIDA. And moving on to the Senate, the Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, says the increase in electricity tariff is the beginning of the solution to the challenges and inefficiencies in Nigerian power sector. At an investigative hearing by the Senate Committee on Power seeking to halt electricity tariff increase, the minister asserts that the increase will reduce by 1 trillion naira the burden of subsidy on the federal government for 2024. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali reports.
Since you raised your tariff to 225 on the basis of 1,400 per dollar, now that dollar is 1,000, we assume that it will also come down in like manner.
Does it just address the exposure of the government to the subsidy, which would have been over 3 trillion? Or does it go ahead to address the fundamental problem of the lack of solvency within the entire sector?
I'm not even talking about the poor people. I'm talking about poorest of the poor. I only hope, if you don't want to run into a large social crisis, and I hope you won't extend this magical increase.
Minister, please hear me. In your ministry today, you have a department that is called generation, transmission, distribution, not for consumer protection.
The investigative hearing featured arguments and counter-arguments on whether the more than 200% electricity tariff increase on 15% of consumers isolated on Band A should be stopped or continue, despite the much talked about consequence.
And even when we do have 20 hours of power, if we are to have 20 hours of supply, 225 naira would certainly put us out of business.
The discourse believe that the regulator, by the power vested by the Senate and the new Electricity Act, acted in prudence and in line with the Constitution.
There's no way we can add this electricity increase now to petroleum subsidy removal at the same time and expect people not to be suffocated.
Manufacturing for our own consumption, not even to talk about export, is a critical and vital part of our national development. And at the point where we are now, I don't see how most industries are going to survive.
But the Minister of Power insists that the increase in tariff is a life support to the power sector, which, if removed, could lead to an avoidable collapse.
The alternative will be worse. The alternative is do nothing to the tariff at all. And I can assure you, in 3 months, the entire sector will be grounded.
Authorities in the power sector gave assurances that the policy decision will have a positive impact by way of improved infrastructure, generation and distribution. From the National Assembly, Lami Ali, NTA News.
Complex forms of evolving threats globally have made nations' security outfits strategize to effectively and efficiently combat such threats. This, the Nigerian Army is constantly undertaking to train logisticians with modern techniques and tools. A correspondent reports that the only College of Logistics and Management in Africa is currently training officers in the Senior Leadership and Staff Officers Course 2 2024 to become think tanks in their respective corps.
By the power conferred on me as the commandant, hereby inaugurate the Senior Leadership and Staff Officers Course 2 of 2024.
The commandant of the college, Major General Wisdom Etuk, said the course is a deliberate process to enhance and fulfill the command philosophy of the Chief of Army Staff at transforming the Nigerian Army into a well-equipped and highly motivated force that will achieve constitutional responsibility within joint operating environment. The inaugural lecture, titled The Making of an Effective Leader and Staff Officer for Joint Operating Environment, presented by the 15th Commandant of the College, listed some attributes of operational level officers, expectations and limitations of the system on staff-trained officers.
These are a set of officers that before now they joined the Army as purely professionals. So they had no privilege to be trained on Nigerian Army conventions in the way we write, the way we act, and then on leadership. So in addition to their competence as lawyers, as dentists, as doctors, as engineers, and all the professionals, they now have additional capacity or skills to effectively function in the military.
Logistics and professional partners of the Nigerian Army speak on the importance of the course.
Insecurity, criminality in the world today has taken a new dimension. And therefore, if you want to be able to deal with it and curb it, of course, you have to be a step ahead of the criminals themselves.
So this course is very, very important to study the logistics of movement, both their own and the counter logistics for the bandit.
105 direct regular commission officers and 1 allied student from the Gambia will for the next 36 weeks undergo intensive training to enable them protect the nation's territorial integrity and secure the borders from violations on land, maritime, air, cyber and space.
It's time for us to take some messages. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. Industry players are drawing attention to the importance of seeking the interest of those at the receiving end by sustaining the customer's confidence in the banking sector. The plea came to the fore following the new directive to banks by the Central Bank of Nigeria to increase minimum capital requirement for various levels of authorized licenses. Amaka Owo reports.
Lagos is generally referred to as the commercial nerve of the nation, and specifically the banking hub of Nigeria, with most bank head offices located within the city, as major activities that shape the sector takes place within the former nation's capital. The city also hosts a huge banking population, with expectations of stability in the sector, in spite of the anticipated uncertainties occasioned by the process of recapitalization of banks.
CBN should ensure that the capitalization process or the recapitalization process does not cause any major disruption. So the banking system, it doesn't cause loss of confidence in the banking system. It doesn't, as much as possible, lead to loss of jobs and also loss of shareholders' investment. So there is no cause for alarm, but that reassurance has to come from the Central Bank of Nigeria so that we don't see any incidents of panic withdrawal or panic action on the part of depositors.
Considering that the banking industry really has no borders, it's an international industry, your capacity has to be benchmarked against other banks in the world.
Options for the commercial banks are that they meet up with this new minimum capital requirements within the 24 months, or explore other options of either involvement in merger and acquisitions, or they can choose to revise their license.
Industry players express optimism that the banks have the capacity to meet the recapitalization exercise expected to be actualized within the 24-month window period, adding that the move will increase liquidity in the banking sector, strengthen the financial system, and above all is in line with the federal government's target of building a 1 trillion naira economy by year 2030. In Lagos, Amaka Owo, NTA News.
And to discuss further with me the recapitalization of banks and how it affects Nigerians is a financial expert, Samuel Showmi. Thank you for joining us on Panorama.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here today.
All right, now, in a layman's term, what is recapitalization?
Well, it is a process of increasing the share capital base of banks that operate within the Nigerian banking system. So it takes different form. The banks can choose to, go through the window of right issue. They can do offer for subscription, and then there's also the window of private placement for them. You understand? So it is just about increasing their minimum capital base. And this is solely based on the equity capital base, because the capital base of banks are divided into two. We have tier 1 capital and we have tier 2 capital. For tier 1 capital, you have the equity capital, you have the share premium, account, and you also have the retained earning. But for the purpose of this current recapitalization, CBN is saying we are removing retaining earning from the tier 1 capital. So we're only focusing on increasing the equity capital for this particular exercise. So retained earning is not part of the minimum capital base for that.
Okay, now many are wondering, why is recapitalization based on those categories you just are talking about?
Well, I think the target of CBN this time around is to strengthen the financial asset of the banks.
Okay.
You understand? Because CBN allowed banks to factor in their retained earning. In all sincerity, it's not all the banks that we have issue with meeting up with 500 billion. Because if you look at some banks, they have well over 1 trillion naira in their retained earning. A bank like Zenith Bank and some other tier 1 banks like that. But for the purpose of, creating liquidity and at the same time to entrench soundness in terms of their financial base, we are looking at their equity capital and the share premium account for this particular exercise.
Okay. Now, does this recapitalization have anything to do with the digital banks?
Oh, no. For the purpose of this exercise, the digital banks are not involved. The banks that are involved are the banks that have international banking license, the national banking license, the regional commercial banks, and we have the non-interest commercial bank as well, like Jais Bank, and also the regional banks. You understand? So those are, and the merchant banks as well. Those are the categories that are involved in this recapitalization. Yeah.
Now, for small and medium businesses, can recapitalization help their businesses grow?
Fantastic. One of the objectives of this recapitalization is for us to be able to have a sound financial system that will, create liquidity for Nigerian economy. One of the major roles that the banks play in an economy is financial intermediation. They are the ones that are supposed to provide access to small and medium scale businesses. So increasing their capital base will give them that buffer. Now they will have adequate resources for them to be able to lend to those sectors that requires financing for their business. And at the end of it all, it's going to lead to business expansion, GDP growth. Bearing in mind we are targeting a $1 trillion economy by 2026 and maybe $3 trillion by 2030. So for us to get to that level, we need a very sound financial system, and that is why we say come and recapitalize.
Okay, from the background that we heard that they have 24 months, windows period. Is this time frame enough for what the CBN is hoping to achieve with banks?
Definitely, because an average capital raise process may take like 6 months. If all required documentation are done on time, if financial advisors are appointed on time, you understand, it is very, very achievable. And depending on the method the banks want to use, if it is right issue you want to do, it means you are speaking to your existing shareholders. So that will not take you much longer time. You can easily arrive at a decision to go through that route. And once the shareholders, either at an annual general meeting through a special resolution, or you organize an extra general meeting where they can pass those resolutions, then the whole process within 6 months to 7 months can be finalized.
Okay, so are you saying that customers' savings in banks are safeguarded by recapitalization? Definitely.
With recapitalization, you are going to buttress, you are going to buffer, you are going to strengthen the banks. So depositors' money definitely is at safe haven. So there is no cause for alarm. Depositors should not in any way panic because of this process. Rather, they should be happy that they are putting their money in a strong financial institution.
All right. Now, I want your last words to, encourage Nigerians, or rather advise Nigerians on, this recapitalization as it affects their personal economic growth.
Oh, fantastic. This recapitalization is going to provide, one, opportunity for investment for Nigerians. If you're an existing shareholder, you go back, your bank is coming out with right issue, this is the time to buy more. Because doing right issue, definitely most of these banks are going to come to the market at a discount to the prevailing market price. If you are not yet playing in the capital market, it also provides an opportunity for you to come and play. A lot of banks are going to come out with public offer. This is the time. And if you are a block investor that is looking towards coming to play big in the financial sector, this is the time for you to come in. You can come in through private placement. Okay. And also, this is also the time for mergers and acquisition. For those banks that do not have capacity, 2 or 3 can come together. You know, the synergy effect will definitely produce a stronger institution.
So the overall benefit goes to the, the nation's economic growth.
Definitely. Recapitalization can serve as a catalyst for shared prosperity. All and sundry are going to benefit. Okay. You can benefit as an investor, either as an existing investor or a potential investor. And for the government, the process of recapitalization, government is also going to make some money, because people will pay filing fees and all whatnot. You understand? So FIRS will make money.
It's good all the way. Thank you, Samuel Shomi, for your thoughts on Panorama on this recapitalization.
It's my pleasure. It's always